Witches have been a part of history and pop culture since the beginning of time. Not only are they seen in movies and TV shows, they are very real. In this video, we'll be counting down the top 5 real witches who haunt the woods part 2. Coming in at number 5, we have Circe. Circe was one of the most powerful sorceresses of Greek mythology, and she was the daughter of Hecate, and was also the cousin of Zeus, the king of Olympians. She was a goddess of warning and dark moon who came to the patroness of witchcraft. She was exiled onto an island where she learned the art of magic. Circe's magical abilities came from both potion making and spell casting. She quickly gained a reputation for trickery, being ill-tempered and casting spells onto those who ridiculed and mocked her. Whoever disrespected her would be turned into an animal without the slightest effort on her behalf. It was her supernatural abilities that ultimately led to her exile on the remote island of Aiae, said to be located off the southern coastline of Italy about 100 kilometers from Rome. Circe was sentenced to this island for all of eternity as a punishment for practicing witchcraft onto Scylla. Circe had fallen in love with Laveau, a sea god, who became infatuated with Scylla, so when Circe's advances and attempts at seduction failed miserably, she was put into a jealous rage. Circe then poisoned the water where Scylla bathed, and as a result a hideous monster was born. When it was found out it was Circe, she was banished for the rest of her life from her immortal home and family. When on the island, she was found by Odysseus, who was on a route traveling home with his men. They eventually became lovers, even though Circe killed Odysseus' men with her powers. Some say she used her powers to tempt and seduce Odysseus to stay on the island with her, and became her lover. Since the days of ancient Greece, Circe's name has been used to describe witchcraft, seduction, and deception. She's been depicted in paintings over the years, tempting Odysseus, casting spells over his men, and practicing her dark arts to lure men and punish them, along with turning her enemies into hideous animal-like creatures. In at number 4, we have Morgan Le Fay. Morgan Le Fay was a powerful enchantress in the 5th and 6th century, and she was related to King Arthur and was said to be his magical savior and protector. She was believed to be a goddess, a witch, and a sorceress. Morgan is skilled and learned what useful properties all herbs contain, so that she had the ability to cure the ailments and illnesses in the body. She also could shapeshift and was able to fly. When King Arthur was wounded in battle, he was brought to her chamber, and she was easily able to cure him. So after that, she was committed to his care from then on. Morgan also uses her healing skills with various of Arthur's Knights of the Round Table, including Lancelot, who she fell in love with, and tried to seduce him, but he wasn't interested. Morgan showed Lancelot her incredible powers, and even though he had some powers as well, he was always defeated by the witch, and he described her as the most feared woman in the world. She soon is practicing more black magic and goes from helping and healing to becoming inherently evil. Morgan had the ability to communicate with the animals and sea creatures, ultimately giving her the name of the Empress of the Wilderness. When she began to demonstrate her magical powers, it's believed that Devil was her companion, and even brought Lucifer himself, disguising him as a dragon to destroy her enemies. Morgan is seen by many as a malicious and cruel sorceress, and some say that she was working to take over her King Arthur's throne through her harmful magic, scheming, and the ability to manipulate men. Most of the time, Morgan's witchcraft corresponds with those of other people like Merlin's and the Lady of the Lakes, featuring the ability to shapeshift, illusion, and casting sleeping spells. In at number 3, Marie Laveau. Marie Laveau was born in early 1800, and she was a Louisiana practitioner of voodoo and is known as the Voodoo Witch of New Orleans. She was a dedicated practitioner of voodoo, as well as being a healer and herbalist, and is one of the most well-known practitioners of the voodoo art and culture. Marie didn't take long to dominate the voodoo culture and society in New Orleans areas, and being named the Queen of Voodoo. During her time practicing the art of voodoo, she would perform her services in such places like her home on St. Anne Street within Ghost Square and at Lake Pontchartrain Train, but it's unknown why she chose only these locations to perform her services. Many of her followers would call her for help with many things like family disputes, health, finances, and many other things. Once she was established in the art of voodoo, Marie opened her own beauty parlor where she worked as a hairdresser for wealthy families in New Orleans. It's believed that the occult part of her magic mixed Roman Catholic saints with African spirits and Native American spiritualism. Marie was also said to have owned a snake and named it Zombie after an African god. It is rumored that her magic was supported by a network of informants that she developed while working as a hairdresser in prominent white households. Marie excelled at obtaining inside information on her wealthy patrons by instilling fear in their servants, whom she either paid off or cured their mysterious ailments, and it was proven that she owned 7 slaves at one time. Marie was known to visit prisons to get death row prisoners ready for their execution, but she often would poison them herself after praying with them. The Queen of Voodoo died in 1881 at the age of 79, but she remains a legend today and is often referred to as one of the best to ever do it. Many famous musicians have have written songs about or referring to Marie Laveau, and fun fact, in 1982 the famous punk rock band The Misfits were arrested and accused of attempting to exhume Marie from her grave after a local concert. In at 2 we have Moll Dyer. If you've seen the horror movie The Blair Witch Project, then you may already be familiar with the legend of the infamous Moll Dyer. She was a legendary 17th century resident of Leonardtown, Maryland, who was said to be a witch and accused of witchcraft and chased out of her home by the local townsfolk on a winter night. Her body was found a few days later, partially frozen to a large stone in the town of Allstate. It's believed that the rock itself is cursed and people that go near it will experience dizziness and fainting. The legendary rock is located on the grounds of Tudor Hall, where the Historical Society has its headquarters. It is said that her spirit still haunts the land to this day, looking for the men who forced her from her home before her death. The land near her cabin is said to be cursed, never able to grow crops, and an unusual number of lightning strikes have been recorded near her home. A road 3 miles south of Leonardtown was named after her and is now known as Moll Dyer Road, along with the creek which parallels the road being named Moll Dyer's Run. A man who was hunting along the run in 1970 reported seeing a very dense fog patch, cylindrical in shape, and the light stretched 8 inches in length and crossed the stream and went east, moving across the wind instead with the wind, and then it turned and went south, and it happened not once but twice. Moll Dyer was one of the historical figures that inspired the character in the Blair Witch Project, and she is the most well-known and famous witch in Maryland. The story of Moll has also been featured in the show American Supernatural in 2014, has inspired multiple books, and even in a Halloween ballet performance named The Legend of the Witch, performed from 1999 to 2006 in Maryland. In at number 1 we have Dion Fortune. Born Violet Mary Firth in 1890 in North Wales, Dion Fortune was a British occultist and author and said to be a modern-day witch. She wrote often about the occult in both fiction and both non-fictional stories. Dion possessed many abilities like contacting the dead, magical powers, and often had vision from her so-called past lives. Once she recalled having visions at the age of 4 of Atlantis, and she believed that was one of her past lives. In 1924 she founded the Fraternity of the Inner Light, a magical society dealing with religious philosophy and alternative realities. The fraternity's rituals were carried out under dim light, with Dion claiming bright light disperses etheric forces. A light would be placed on the altar while incense was burned, and the members would begin walking around the room chanting with the intent of building a psychic force. Next, the cosmic entities would be invoked, with the members believing that these entities would manifest in astral form and interact with the chosen ones. The magical principles on which her fraternity were based were adapted from the late 19th century Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, with other influences coming from Theosophy and Christian Science. The magical ceremonies performed by Dion's group were placed into 2 categories: initiation, in which the candidate was introduced to magical forces, and evocation, where these forces were manipulated for a given purpose. Dion died in 1924, leaving behind her magical society, which has survived to this day. Her novels in particular influenced on later occult and modern pagan groups such as Wicca. Author Ronald Hutton wrote a book called The Triumph of the Moon, A History of Modern Pagan Witchcraft, considers her the foremost female figure of British occultism. She is recognized by many as one of the most significant occultists and ceremonial magicians of the early 20th century. Well, there we have it. Thanks for tuning into this video. I'll see you in the next one.